Welcome everyone to the 2013 conference. Our theme this year is the power of networks, and it's been very interesting that as we've worked on the conference over the last year, and we do work on it all year, we'll start on next year's on Monday, we have really used this as a strong rallying cry for BSR, and the response to the theme has been really positive from all of you and everyone we work with. Every day we experience how networks are shaping and reshaping everything that we do, and it is very clear to us that achieving our mission of a just and sustainable world will happen only through many different kinds of networks. And we are very proud to help to assemble this network, a network of our member companies, our partners, our friends, and I want all of you to know that we see you as a very powerful community on this crucial journey. We met last year in New York, just a year ago, and as always, many momentous things have happened in between the times when we gather. And reflecting on what's happened over the last year, I think frames the discussions that I'm sure we will have this year as we look ahead. The obvious place to start in looking back was Superstorm Sandy, which hit New York within days of our conference and devastated one of the world's great cities, affected our colleagues in our New York office, and I'm sure many of you. And the storm had a very personal impact, but at a broad level also is yet another reminder of how climate change is reshaping our world. And we've seen the initial reports on the latest IPCC report on climate change with its nearly ironclad sense of certainty about what's happening, impact on food, on infrastructure, on migration, on cities, and a sense that climate change is not something that is going to be changing our world. It is something that absolutely is changing our world right now and reminds us of the imperative of keeping warming to 2 degrees Celsius. We've also been shocked by the tragedies in Bangladesh over the past year. They provide a reminder of the very real human costs of not managing supply chains safely and sustainably. And I can say from my personal perspective, it is doubly tragic in that we seem to need to relearn the same lessons over and over again, and even after 20 years of efforts, we find that we're not where we need to be in terms of keeping the people who make our products safe. And it reminds us of both the very human cost of that, but also the need to come up with new ideas. I had 4 or 5 conversations just at the reception last night about the need to generate new ideas to think about supply chains differently. We also look at public policy, and the election in Australia brought a reversal on the carbon tax in that country. We heard great promise from President Obama in his inaugural speech in January, and there's been some movement, but probably more disappointment and a sense of things that aren't moving forward very rapidly in Washington. Also on policy, the revelations from the NSA remind us about how technology is creating new ethical dilemmas that have implications not only for government, but also very much for business. And when we think about our own work, the survey that GlobeScan conducted with BSR that was released last week, over 700 sustainable business leaders who said very clearly that integration is not happening as rapidly as we would like. Our plenary speakers notwithstanding, by the way. We have a lot of great exceptions here this week. My job, though, isn't to catalog problems, so I'm not here to bum you out as we get started. And in fact, we're all here because we're optimists, because we believe in change. We are motivated to make a difference, and every day that's what we do. We get up to find new solutions to these utterly crucial questions. And so I think we should also take a look at some of the solutions that have been developed over the last year on issues that are so central to our shared future. And let me start with something that isn't as visually arresting as a hurricane. It's not as likely to be as It's not as likely to be central to a spy novel as what Edward Snowden has been producing. And that's the story of poverty reduction. You know, a couple of weeks ago in the New York Times, Nicholas Kristof wrote about the remarkable advances in reducing poverty over the last 30 years. And the language he used, you know, it's easy to gloss over it as we're inundated with information, but he called this a triumph for humanity. 3 very simple words that are very, very powerful, and I think remind us of some incredibly important and really huge achievements that have come from a lot of different places, but certainly in part from people thinking about the role of business in poverty reduction. So a triumph for humanity, really powerful words, and something that I think we can celebrate and look to expand. Let me put it in more tangible terms. Just one example. Kristof reported that since 1990, the number of children under the age of 5 who die every year has dropped by 50%. And that means 6 million children every year are living past the age of 5 when they weren't just 23 years ago. That is astonishing. That is over 100 million people who have survived because of our joint efforts through business, through government, civil society, to reduce extreme poverty. So I think we can also have a sense of optimism, and as the world begins to define and debate the Sustainable Development Goals, which will replace the Millennium Development Goals, we can do so with confidence that when we focus the world's attention on these big questions, we actually achieve quite a lot. There are other things that I think should give us great cause for hope. We see great creativity with new business models, and we'll have a couple of new businesses represented by their founders here at our conference. One, locally based company, Yurtle, which is based on the concept of collaborative consumption. Another one, Honest Tea, which is very explicitly a values-based company, trying to create a different product based on a different kind of thinking. And we are delighted that we'll have the 3 founders, the co-founders of Yurtle and the founder of Honest Tea, here with us this week. And we also see lots of great things happening through disruptive technologies. And disruptive technologies don't just disrupt, they create. We will hear from Roz Harvey, who is leading the creation of a sensor network in Australia. It's called Sense Tea. It's not another tea company, by the way, so Honest Tea can rest easy. We'll hear from Danny Kennedy of Sungevity later this afternoon, a former Greenpeace activist who's created a solar business here in the Bay Area, and Alan Blue, the co-founder of LinkedIn. Each of these leaders knows just how the world is changing through new kinds of networks. And so all of these things, I think, are great reason for us to be motivated, inspired, and to celebrate successes. And these are the things that animate us at BSR. So as we look ahead to 2014 and beyond, we've taken a decision to focus more of our efforts on 2 crucial themes: business in a climate-constrained world and business leadership for an inclusive economy. These 2 themes are what we mean when we talk about our mission of working with business to create a just and sustainable world. And we see these themes as mutually reinforcing. We'll hear from Mary Robinson tomorrow, and Mary will talk about the human dimension of climate change, the concept of climate justice. And indeed, the things that Nick Kristof has written about, the advances in improving people's well-being, those things will be reversed if we don't get climate change right. Climate change, in my mind, is, yes, it's an environmental issue, but it is ultimately an issue about the quality of life on this planet. So we will be focusing on business in a climate-constrained world. And as my colleague Eric Olson wrote a couple of weeks ago, and you'll see him up on stage in a little bit here, that for business, the goal should be, I think this is a great quote, to avoid the unmanageable and to manage the unavoidable. So climate change is happening, we need to manage it, and we need to avoid the worst possible impacts. So for us, our objective is to help our member companies build a bold approach, a systemic approach, based on all the things that business does. Business operates lots of different activities as a value chain partner, an investor, an innovator, a leader, and an influencer. Business has a voice, and that's very important as well. Our second theme is business leadership for an inclusive economy. And the aim of this work is to catalyze business leadership in a way that enables all people to participate in, benefit from, and contribute to the economy, society, and a healthy environment. And to realize this vision, our aim is to underline the importance of including marginalized populations, women, migrants, indigenous communities, and the poor into the mainstream economy. And we know, because we've seen it, as many as you have, that by doing that, new economic opportunity is created. This is something that builds markets, makes markets more resilient. And we've seen lots of great examples through our work on women in the global economy, through our HER project, which is growing and going like gangbusters and will continue to expand in 2014. And also a new initiative that we'll be undertaking to help improve the well-being of women in Chinese factories, thanks to support from the Walmart Foundation. So what do these themes mean for us and our work with you? Business in a climate-constrained world, business leadership for an inclusive economy. Well, you'll see them very visibly, very explicitly, and repeatedly woven into everything that we do. The content that we generate, the projects that we undertake with all of you, the cross-sector partnerships that we build, all of the things that are the tools that we use to make important progress. You'll be seeing and hearing more from us as we turn the calendar to 2014, and we'd love to hear from you about how we can make these themes powerful and active for all of you. So let me come back to the concept of networks. And networks shape how we see our world. You know, my first job out of university was at ABC News, which was then one of three major television networks here in the United States that had immense power. 80% of people watching television, back when people watched television at a specific time, you remember those days, watched one of the three networks. There was immense power there. Well, that concept is, utterly archaic. I try to explain it to my kids. They tell me that they understand it. I'm not really sure that they do, but that's for when I go home on Friday. So networks have always been with us, but they've changed in some amazing ways. And as we approach this week, I'd like to think in particular of three networks. One is our network of member companies. And the more than 100 staff at BSR, we work every day. We're very proud of our member network, and we work with you in a variety of ways. Our aim, it's worth saying, I think, is to inform you, to enable and support you, to connect you, and also to challenge you, that we're here to help you be more successful and to go further, all in the name of new ways of doing business. Second is this essential network that cuts across different sectors: business, civil society, public sector. And I think one of the defining features of the world of sustainable business is this notion of collaboration between sectors. And we remain strongly committed. This has been a core part of what we do from our founding, strongly committed to building and supporting multi-stakeholder networks that are really the only way to achieve systemic progress on sustainability. In the last year, we've been very happy to launch three new networks, I think more, but three worth mentioning. One, the guiding principles on access to health care, we're very proud of. Two, the Maritime Anti-Corruption Network. And three, the Sustainable Lifestyles Frontier Group. And I mentioned that one last because that actually grew out of a response to my opening talk last year. As I mentioned the other night, it appears that some of you do actually listen to what I say at the start. So I've taken this very seriously this year. Solitaire Townsend of Futerra said, what about this idea? And that's grown into a really interesting and dynamic group looking at the question of just what constitutes a sustainable lifestyle. So we really invite you to think together with us about new networks we can form. And then there are the networks that are enabled by new forms of technology, not least by those that are built here in the San Francisco Bay Area. Social networks are very much on our mind. They offer new ways of inspiring and connecting people, and I'm sure lots of you are right now on Facebook, on LinkedIn, on Vine, on Twitter, Instagram, Pinterest, Facebook, and probably 3 or 4 more that have launched and had their IPO since I started talking this morning. And technology is also connecting machines in new ways, and this is really interesting as well. The Internet of Things that is growing very, very rapidly, and this is a development that in lots of different ways creates opportunities for step change improvements, huge improvements in terms of greater efficiency, smart buildings, smart cities, smart agriculture, smart eating, etc. So I think our challenge is to leverage these 3 networks, the BSR member network, a network of cross-sector collaborations, and the new networks that are enabled by technology. And what's really interesting is that as I go around and talk with all of you, I hear consistently from the companies that think most deeply about what it means to be a sustainable business. They're the ones that know most fully that they can't do this alone and that networks are essential. And when leaders underline the importance of collaboration, I think that sends a very, very powerful message. And that's a message that we also try to take on as well. And I'll give you one example of something that we hope to be doing in 2014. I participated in a meeting a couple of weeks ago with a half-dozen leaders of other sustainable business networks, all with the goal of being much more deliberate about collaboration between our networks to advance progress on climate change, to look at catalyzing business leadership, promoting a much stronger and more compelling public dialogue on climate, and also influencing public policy. And one small proof point is, I'm happy to announce this today, at the launch of the World Business Council for Sustainable Development's annual meeting, also today in Istanbul, Peter Bakker, the president of the WBCSD, is saying exactly the same thing. So we're trying to coordinate our messages and our actions to build a network of networks that will help us make more progress. There will be more to come in the next 3 months on this. So back to the conference. As always, I'm very excited about the conference that we've created. We've got a great group of speakers. We'll hear from Marina Gorbis and Dave Steiner this morning. One thing I'm particularly proud of is, and maybe you've seen this infographic, we've got 60% of our speakers here are women. And I go to a lot of conferences. That number is very rare, very, very rare. I attended one conference, which I won't name, earlier this year. A great group of speakers, 9 out of 10 speakers were men. So we've made an effort to have as diverse an array of speakers as we can. We've got speakers from 30 countries, or attendees from 30 countries on 6 continents. Our speakers are divided exactly equally between business and government, civil society, and academia. And it's that richness that I think will make a real difference. We're also trying to do some new things. We're going to have a hackathon Thursday night into Friday morning. The first time we've done this. We're bringing together, I think, 30 or so people to build with lots of Red Bull supporting them. Some new tech solutions to some challenges. We'll have people up on stage Friday morning with some judging and prizes. It should be a lot of fun, and we think we'll generate some new ideas. You can, if you're on Twitter, you can follow this through hashtag BSR Hack, and I want to thank Qualcomm for sponsoring the hackathon. Should be a lot of fun. Also, please use the app for the conference. You can log in using your email as your username, and your password is your last name, first letter capitalized. So a little commercial for our app right there. You can get up to minute information on that, and one piece of information to share with you is we've had a change to one of our plenary speakers, which I want to announce. Tony Elumelu, who is to speak tomorrow morning, unfortunately was not able to travel from Nigeria to the United States, and we think we found a great solution. Jim Burke, who is the CEO of Participant Media, a great company producing movies for theatrical release and documentaries, will step in, and I think you'll be really energized by Jim. Finally, on the conference, I want to thank some of our key sponsors. Target, GE Foundation, Adobe, and Bloomberg Business Week, amongst others, make this conference go. We are very, very appreciative, and I hope that all of you are as well. They help to enrich this experience. Okay, so in closing, you are a great global network. The world of sustainability is fascinating in that it has, we see a network of connected people, all with the same goal, in every corner of the world, connecting in all sorts of different ways with a common way of seeing the world. There is immense power in this, and sometimes because the mountain is high, the challenge is hard, we probably underestimate the power that we all have. So there is a very strong combination of passion, insight, expertise, and a desire to accomplish tangible things. So let's make the most of that. And I hope that all of you will be challenged, will be inspired, and will come up with some new ideas and build new networks that will enable you to go even further in the year ahead. That's why we do this. That's why we're here. That's why we do this conference.